Trust is measurable and it's manageable. It is a skill that we can all learn and cultivate and develop.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform. Delighted to be joined today all the way from Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. We have who The Economist named one of the world's, if not the world's, leading business trust expert. We have president of Success Through Trust and author of The Power of Trust. Welcome to the show today, Natalie Doyle Oldfield.
Hi there, welcome.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Natalie, and we've got so much that we can talk about. We've had a quick chat before recording here, and we've talked in the past. I love what you're doing, and loving your focus and your depth of expertise in this area of trust. And it's something that I'd love to go into more depth with, and I'm sure my audience is going to be delighted to listen to what we should know about trust and what can we do to develop it. But maybe let's start off with a bit of background in terms of what got you to where you are today. What's your background story?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Paul. Delighted to be here. And like you, I love working with teams to help them become high-performing teams. My backstory, well, the short and long answer is I've always loved working with customers. I started my career working with a very small engineering firm that focused on helping manufacturing companies with ERP systems and manufacturing different manufacturing systems, and always found myself in roles in marketing or marketing communications or product management, always on the customer side. In those roles, what I always focused on, Paul, was understanding what the customer viewpoint was.
Right.
And most of my career before starting Success Through Trust 11 years ago now was in the IT industry.
Okay.
So worked with a lot of technology companies, like I said, in different marketing and communication type roles, and found myself in the last IT company. Was an international company. We did business in 55 countries. I was chief marketing officer for the company.
Wow.
We had an incredible team. We had software in some of the world's largest and most famous hotels, largest and most famous convention centers all around the world, from Hong Kong to London to Las Vegas. And my manager, who was the CEO at the time, asked me to take over the sales role. And I really didn't want to do that. I loved what I was doing.
Right.
And like I said, we had a great marketing team, but fast forward, I decided, okay, I will. I had a lot of relationships with customers because, of course, I was trying to understand what was important to them, because when you build a product or have a service, best practice is understand what the customer wants, what's important to them. So I decided finally, after a year, to take over that role. And the good news is it was awesome for about a month. The bad news is it was September 2008 and the market crashed.
Right.
So we were offering software as a service, and all these hotels and conference centers were not busy.
Right.
Because companies weren't traveling. So I didn't know what to do. And here I was now accountable for sales, which is why I didn't really want to get into it, because in sales, you're so accountable, and everything was going just fine. And I, quite honestly, Paul, I didn't want to fail. It was, when I look back now, I can say, I know that, but at the time I was just really hesitant because it's so accountable in that role.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't really like that title, to be honest. Because there's something about that, and I really believe none of us want to be sold to. We want to choose to buy, and we want to buy from people that are going to give us great advice and are going to be there for us. So when I took this role on and then the market crashed and customers were starting to either put things on hold or go away, I thought, wow, how am I going to figure out how to sell? I had never taken a course on sales. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I did my research, bought all these books, tried to figure out how do you do this, and talked to the people who were really successful at
Right.
sales.
Mm.
And what I found is that I wasn't going to be comfortable saying, okay, well, here's the process to go through. Here are all the questions to ask to lead people down this path. That was not me.
Mm.
But what I found is that the most successful people all said very similar things to me. Just focus on your customer. Just focus on the relationship.
Right.
I did that. And of course, as we all know, the market came back and our sales came back.
Mm.
And what happened was the entire team, we just focused on providing as much value as we could, as much advice as we could. And not only did our sales start coming back, we started to get referrals and we
Right.
started to win business from the competition. Well, I got so excited about this that I went back to school to answer the question in a business to business environment. How is it that customers or clients decide to buy?
Right.
So I did graduate research in that and
Yeah.
found out that very quickly that it all comes down to one thing. It all comes down to trust.
Mm.
We've all heard the saying, we buy from people we trust that we like.
Mm.
Well, we really do, Paul. It's actually the number one driver to all of our decisions. First, we decide whether or not we're going to trust. Then we decide to actually look at someone's capabilities or listen to them.
Mm.
And I learned that very early on in my graduate research and started doing more research. And then I ended up doing my thesis and all my work around trust. And I created a framework and a whole model based on the scientific method, created this doing my graduate research, and then over a 7-year period, tested it out in the real world, in the business world,
Yeah.
and created this framework and a diagnostic that shows not only how to build, strengthen, and manage trust or protect it, but also how to measure it.
Right.
So I really believe
Mm.
that what we can measure, we can manage. And the
Yes.
flip side, what we can manage, we should be able to measure. So I
Mm.
built this quantifiable tool I call it the Client Trust Index. And it's a diagnostic that a company, we can actually measure a customer's trust in a company and they get a trust equity score.
Right.
And then I created this framework of how people can, in a step-by-step way, build, strengthen, or protect relationships of trust. And this framework is evidence-based, and there are principles so that people from a variety of different experiences can actually apply these principles in each and every interaction in a way that they're comfortable with.
Right.
So that's a really long answer. That's how I got into it. And then I guess I get so excited about it. As you mentioned, I then wrote a book about it called The Power of Trust, How Top Companies Build, Manage, and Protect It. I wrote a companion workbook because a lot of what I do is workshops and trainings to help teach people that didn't learn this in university or in school. They didn't
Mm.
learn the skills to build relationships. They were more focused on technical skills, perhaps, of the step-by-step process to build, manage, and protect relationships of trust.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so much amazing stuff in there. And there's a couple of bits I've been scribbling a load of notes here 'cause there's some fantastic points. One is it's a conversation I've had with so many people about the sales aversion, shall we say, in terms of people who aren't, well, maybe call themselves naturally a salesperson, when they're offered a sales role or told to do a sales thing, sort of really stand back and go, "Actually, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
And the number of people I've spoken to is, it's not about selling. I've got a person with my brother-in-law. I've just come back from New Zealand, as we were saying beforehand, before we started this recording, and seeing my brother-in-law, who used to be working on the front desk concierge in a hotel, and he took a career shift into selling cars.
Okay.
It was a real sort of sideways move, and he turned out to be an excellent car salesman because he wasn't about selling cars. He was about customer service and that concierge mentality of what is it you need? How can I help you? What can we
Yes.
do? And
Yeah.
those elements that make you a really good salesperson, it's not the, and I think that wrote here as well, it's not the scripted side of things.
Yeah.
Lots of those companies are like, here's a script that will get you the results. Well, if you read that script to enough people, yeah, you'll get some results. But actually, are you getting sustainable, repeatable results, or are you just getting a sort of chance piece that you can just throw some numbers at? So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I might call your brother-in-law, if I met him, a trusted advisor.
yes,
And a lot of people I work with are in sales.
mm,
And let's face it, Paul, we're all in sales.
mm,
At that time, I was just uncomfortable with that title.
yes,
However, I do really believe that everybody in every company should be sensitive to sales and sensitive to helping sales grow the business.
right,
And I believe that that we all want to buy from what I would call a trusted advisor, someone who's going to give us great advice, someone that's going to be a helper,
mm,
right? And your brother-in-law, it sounds like, he just wants to be a helper, like to help someone get the right car.
mm,
In my case, I also love helping companies grow. That's what I love.
right,
And I think that the best salespeople are trusted advisors.
mm,
And I have this model that I share with people when I do a workshop that they're different elements in a relationship, and they're different stages. And really, the ultimate, Paul, is that we all get to a stage of becoming a trusted advisor. Because when you're a trusted advisor, not only do they buy from you, but you get repeat business and referrals.
mm,
And I think that when you have a team of people in your company who are all focused on building relationships of trust with customers and external stakeholders, and the customer could be internal or external,
right,
but let's talk about external customers. When everybody's focused on that, you do get repeat business and
mm,
referrals all day long, every day. And the research that I did to create my framework I mentioned is based on science and evidence. Well, what I found is that there's a statistically significant positive correlation between trust, your trust equity score.
mm,
I mentioned that, you can measure trust, but the
yeah,
trust your customer has and customer loyalty, commitment, the number of referrals, customer satisfaction, and the propensity to continue to buy your products and services.
yeah,
So there's a great business case
yeah,
to focus on trust. And it's a big topic, but it can be practical. And that's what I love to do,
yeah.
is help people make it practical so that they can apply it to their everyday interactions.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I particularly love about this because you've mentioned, and we buy from people that we know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
We talk about trust being so important. You ask any manager, and I know you've done some great research in this space, where asking people, is how important trust is, and the vast majority, if not all, are coming back and saying this is a really, really vital thing for us to be able
Yeah.
to build and sustain our business. And then ask the question, like, well, do you know how to do that? Well, you've mentioned earlier on the fact that we don't learn about how do you get people to trust you, or how do you
No,
build trust. It's not
no.
something we're taught in school. Also, speaking, we're not taught how to learn in school in a lot of ways either. We're taught how to remember and repeat. But
Yeah.
these things that are vital to success and sustainable success in business, having someone like yourself who's going, right, here's how we do that.
Yeah.
We know it's important, but what are the steps? So, I mean, maybe you could talk to a little bit about what does an engagement look like for you? Who do you help? How do you help them? What are the sort of companies you work with, and what does that engagement look like throughout that sort of time with your customer base?
Okay. Um, I work with primarily business owners and leaders of manufacturing companies, IT companies, professional services firms like insurance companies and financial services,
Right.
a variety of industries, really, Paul.
Mm,
A variety of industries. I'll give you an example. So I recently finished a big project with a manufacturing company, and they are in the building materials and construction industry,
Okay.
a manufacturer that makes products for that industry.
Mm.
And the CEO and I sat down last year, and we met through a mutual friend who was a client that I had done some other work with. And he said, I really would love to figure out what happened in my company over the last 3 years through the pandemic. And I
Mm.
said, well, what do you mean? He said, you know what? Like, I just wish my people, so he's a couple thousand employees, would care as much about the customer as I do.
Right.
So a lot of people don't Google trust, Paul. They're
Mm.
not looking up trust, right? They come to me because they say things like, I just wish everybody would focus as much on the customers as I do.
Mm.
I said, okay, well, tell me about that. He said, well, I just feel like things have changed, and I'm not comfortable sending folks to customer meetings without a senior salesperson or a senior leader in the room.
Mm.
Okay. So I said, have you seen any, what I would call indicators or signals of low customer trust?
Mm.
And he's like, well, I don't know what you mean. I said, okay, well, do you get referrals?
Mm.
Well, no, those are down. That's a key performance indicator. Do you get repeat business? Well, that's down. This is one of the reasons that we're concerned. Are your overall revenue down? No, because it's a growing industry.
Right.
And so was not the indicator.
Mm.
No, our revenue is great. Have the number of complaints increased? No, in fact, we have less customer interaction than we've ever had. That's an indicator.
Right.
So I said, okay, have you ever talked to customers? Well, yes, of course we do. But they are a lot like your clients. They're high performance company.
Right.
They're one of the best managed companies in Canada. They've won multiple awards. And so we measured their customers' trust in them. Their customers are wholesalers and dealers who would sell to the end customer, which is a construction company. And they got a trust equity score.
Mm.
And so we started with a diagnostic to see where they are, to figure out where the gaps are, and most importantly, like where to focus.
Right.
So there's lots of data out there, but we wanted to know, okay, what are the insights that we can pull out? Well, what we learned is that their long-term customers do not have as high trust as their new customers. Well,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the other thing we learned is in different geographical areas, so they do business across North America, and in different geographical areas, the trust equity score was higher or lower. Okay, so that's interesting. So what we could find is, some real insights to address the gaps.
Right.
Well, so that's one part of a project. One type of way I work with a company is I actually measure and do customer research to understand where the gaps are, where the vulnerabilities are, and to start with evidence and real data to figure out what's happening and where to focus. Well, the second part of the project, which was phenomenal, is with all this insight, we knew where to focus, Paul.
Right.
With every company, doesn't matter if you're a manufacturing company or an insurance company or a bank or an IT company, you can have the best technology, you can have the best process, but it comes down to the people. It's the people that are actually making everything work, right? That's where the rubber hits the road. It's with the people. So we focused on the people and teaching them the framework and sharing with them the components of how we decide to trust. And I say we, customers decide to trust, people decide to trust.
Right.
And as I've mentioned, and as you know, my framework is based on science and evidence. It has been proven that there are three components: how we communicate, how we behave, and how we serve. So the second part of the engagement with that organization, this manufacturing company, is to train their people. So coach and train on how to build trust.
Right.
And so we have a program. It takes place over several weeks on Zoom, and we turn frontline customer-facing folks into trust champions so that they get referrals and repeat business all day long, every day for customers.
Brilliant.
And really, they're learning how all the very important steps to build trust.
No, I'm loving this, and there's a number of reasons. One of the first ones is the diagnostic element. I think a
Yeah.
lot when you're taking that ethereal thing of trust and actually giving it a number and giving it a score, but also
Yeah.
giving it some data and insight that sits behind it. And anyone who knows me knows I love the insight side and
Yeah.
the data supported evidence for decision making. And I think that is a key part to one, making sure that people understand that this is actually a problem or an opportunity for them because the
Yes.
data is there that's
Yes.
telling them that. But the key point that you said there is about focus. So actually, there's so many things you can do.
Yes.
What's the one thing that you should be doing now, or the couple of really key elements that are going to shift the
Yes.
dial and get you most of the effort, most of the outcome for the
Yes.
easiest, shall I say, effort?
Yeah. And there are a lot of companies that I work with that don't want to or not able to get a quantifiable score. They
Right,
either don't want to because, it's a 3-month project, Paul, and
right,
it's, some companies are like, you know what, I don't even have a customer list.
right,
I don't know how to do that. And sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes I might call a few customers to get in a sense
right,
of what the sentiment is. Other times, I worked with an IT company that we just finished up a 12-week program where I worked with 22 sales engineers and sales reps and account managers and sales support folks who are all on the front line, customer facing. And this company's already doing very well. They didn't have, in my opinion, any indicators of low customer trust.
right,
This manager, this company is a top performer, a worldwide company. They have offices all around the world, and they really wanted to get the ice. What did he say? So my client's first name, I'll call him Ben to stay anonymous. He said, "We want the icing on the cake. I already have a top performing team. They're in the cybersecurity industry, and they make a tool that they then would sell either direct to companies, but primarily through distributors
right,
and partners." And he said, "We just want to be the most trusted partner in the industry.
right,
So we want to invest and make sure that we are the most trusted partner in the industry." So he has a lot of really technical folks on his team, and the sales engineers and the computer scientists and the technical folks, the architects, they are highly technical, yet not confident or not in tune with listening really carefully and building empathy
right.
with clients.
Mm,
So they learn some new tools and steps to deepen relationships with
right.
clients. And that's the track they took. And I work with a lot of companies that are already, I would say, Paul, the most trusted in their industries. They just want to be the most trusted, stay the most trusted, or become
Right.
the most trusted.
And so many parallels to the world of F1, where I spent a lot of my time
Yes.
in that high performance world, where actually, because of the fact that you're already on top of your game, or one of the top players, because of that, you need to invest further in these critical areas. And I think
Yes.
that's a one, it can help you to get there in the first place, but
Yeah.
two, it can also help you to sustain that level of performance and competitive edge against your competition as well, isn't it?
100%. One of my clients, a manufacturing company in the food industry, I asked him at the end of an engagement where we did measure their customers' trust equity, and we then did training. His first name is Mike. I said, "Mike, what would you tell people about what I do?" Because, like I said,
Mm,
people they're not Googling trust, right? They're Googling customer experience. They're Googling repeat business or customer retention, or, how to get a great relationship. He goes, "You know what, Natalie?" He said, "Working with Success Through Trust and it's like having a secret sauce.
right.
It's a competitive advantage."
Mm,
And that's what reminded me when you said competitive
mm,
differentiator.
mm.
it is. And the high performing companies know that you can have the best technology, you can have the best process,
Mm,
but it comes down to the people,
mm,
how they communicate, how they behave, and how they serve. And you can have the best product and communicate it and execute flawlessly. But if there's a behavior issue and someone doesn't walk the talk, or they don't act in the best interest of the customer or the employees, or they're not ethical or authentic, the trust is broken.
mm.
And in today's world, let's face it, people are more skeptical and more critical than ever before, Paul. They are wanting and looking to buy from companies and to buy from people they trust.
And one of the things that's just come to mind, I've just noted down here, that the value in a trust equity score and maintaining. I take it this is something that you can go back and you can recheck and
Yes,
you can test
yes.
on a regular basis. Um, I'm assuming that can be a great indicator and pre-indicator that there might start to be some problems that are going to catch up with you shortly. So it's
Oh,
that
100%. In
yeah,
fact, I recently, just the other day, um, well, I say just the other day, right before Easter, had presented to a long-term client that I've worked with for many years. And trust equity is a key performance indicator in their company.
right,
I have measured their trust equity score 3 times, and we do it every other year.
right,
In their business, I feel like every other year is enough.
okay,
There's not enough changes in one year.
mm,
I have some clients, we do it once a year, but this company, it's every other year. And the first 2 times they had the exact same score.
right,
There were different insights
mm,
with geographical areas, or, I do a segmentation analysis.
yep,
And so we can find the insights and, as I say, find the needle in the haystack.
mm,
But this year, the trust equity score changed dramatically in certain areas.
right.
So now we know that I love the number 3. I feel like companies and people can only focus on really 3 things at a time.
Definitely,
So now we know these are the 3 things they need to focus on for the next year
right,
to close that gap
mm,
and turn people into trust champions, because their trust equity has dipped in certain areas.
right. No,
So it is great when companies see it as a key performance indicator and a key metric. Um, and, this company, I love working with them. It's another manufacturing company, totally different industry, but they see trust as a keystone habit. They're all about customer focus and building relationships of trust,
right.
which, you know, starts inside with having a culture of trust.
Brilliant. No, I mean, some wonderful stuff in it. I think it's such a key thing that people need to be focusing on, and everyone, I'm sure, they're listening to this and going, "Yep, trust's really important," but actually, how do I do it? Is the
Yeah.
key bit, and I love what you're doing in that space. And a quick question about the book then, in terms of
Yeah.
is that what people will get out of the book? Is that to teach them about the frameworks? Is it more? What's the
Yeah.
layout of the book?
Um, the book, The Power of Trust: How Top Companies Build, Manage, and Protect It, actually has a lot of case studies in here, Paul.
Okay.
There are also some checklists, and I actually created it so that it would be the kind of book that you can pick up and read a section. So, this one that I just opened up as an example, you can see that this one is 3 practical ways to eliminate the element of surprise.
Yeah.
Um, and this one is communicating trust to public audiences. This is not PR. Then this section is, common critical trust risk points. So, when trust fails, creating a trust response strategy, 11 rules, 11 guidelines. So, there's a lot of case studies, checklists, things like that in there. And you can find my book on Amazon.com. It's it's got a lot of tips and stories in there of trust wins and things to avoid and things to do to build trust.
Yeah, Fantastic. And as always with my guests, I'll put the links to that book directly in the show notes. So people
Thank
want to
you.
go down below and they can click directly on that. And yeah, anything with that level of practical steps to how do you do this? It's something that
Yeah.
I really love. So maybe let me ask you a couple of slightly different questions then in terms of if you've got this skill set and experience and this expertise in the area of trust.
Yes.
Given a chance, who are the sort of ideal clients, the people, individuals, organizations, teams that you'd like to work with that skill set of yours?
I love working with business owners and leaders that want to be the best of the best, that want to deliver on their promises and offer great experiences to their customers. So companies in manufacturing, in the technology industry, professional services, um, you know, and more traditional industries. I work with it's really companies that want to be the best of the best,
Right.
and that really care about the customer experience
Right. Yeah. So those people who
and relationships.
yeah, so the people who recognize that customer experience and that relationship is the thing that's going to drive their business and continue to keep it sustainable. Yeah.
100%.
Brilliant.
I have on my website, which is successthroughtrust.com. There's
Yep.
an assessment there that a company or an individual can download, and it's to look at the trustworthiness of your team.
Okay.
And it's interesting. So it's very short. It's yes, no. You can do it on your own. And if people are interested, I'm happy to walk through and talk about the results with companies. But it's an eye opener, I've been told, because it really does show if you are customer focused and how your team's doing.
Right.
So I love to work with, like I said, business owners and leaders who want to be the most trusted. I also, speak to organizations that bring business owners and leaders together at conferences to share the message and share tools and tricks and different systems on how to advance a relationship.
Brilliant. And maybe let's flip that question around a little bit and say, if you could sit down and have a coffee, have a meal, have a drink with somebody who you think you could just learn from them to help you perform and help you to be at your best, who would you want that to be?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. You know what? I actually, I learn something from almost every single person I talk to, Paul.
Yeah.
So I love working with and learning from my clients, from business owners, and leaders in organizations to understand their perspective and how they do things and what's important to them. So if I could sit down with anyone, I think it would be, people like you that talked a lot of business owners and leaders of organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always so much to be learned from so many people.
Always.
So,
Always. I think sometimes, when I'm working with a company, I learn as much as they do. So yeah, always.
I'm laughing there because it's a number of my other guests have said it as well. It's one of those.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yeah, when you almost it's almost like a bit of I don't think imposter syndrome is the right thing, but you feel a bit of a cheat in going, I'm learning so much from this. You're paying me to help you, but I'm learning so much from this relationship as well. So it's brilliant.
Yes.
So if there's one thing then. One
Yes.
thing that people should be going away after listening to this episode and thinking about or focusing on, what's the one key message that you'd get people to think about from here?
Trust is measurable and it's manageable. It is a skill that we can all learn and cultivate and develop. And when we focus on it, and when we learn how to build trust, and everybody on your team is a trust champion, a trusted advisor, your business will improve. You're going to get repeat business, referrals, and wonderful customer experience. I would say the one thing we should all focus on is paying attention to it, because you can manage it and you can measure it, and it's tangible.
Yeah.
And it's a leading indicator of success. It's the one thing that can set a company apart.
Brilliant. No, I'm so on board with this. It's unbelievable. So, and I'm sure following on from this, we're going to continue this conversation and see where that trust can be built and how we can leverage that support that we've both got to get this message out to as many people as possible. So, before we close up, then Natalie, if people want to find out more, you've mentioned the book on Amazon, and I'll put the link in there. How do people get in touch? Where should they go to learn more about what you do and to connect with you if they need to?
They can go to my website, which is successthroughtrust.com. And I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Natalie Doyle Oldfield. And you can also email me directly. And noldfield@successthroughtrust.com. I would love to hear from some of your listeners. And like I mentioned, if anyone's interested in that trust assessment, you can go to my website and download that. I have a newsletter that I publish weekly where I share tips and practical steps and tools that you can also download, and you can find that you can sign up on my website for that, and would love to stay in touch with not only you, but your listeners and help you in any way. I'm on a mission to help companies grow. And I really believe that when you turn your frontline folks and customer facing folks into trust champions by winning their unshakable trust, everyone wins, everyone grows.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And I'll put all the links in the show notes as always. And I highly recommend to all the audience, go and check these things out. Go and check out that assessment. Have a look for yourself. Have a look for your team and your organization. It's been such an insightful episode, and I love chatting to you, and I hope to continue this conversation. But for today, Natalie Doyle Oldfield, I really appreciate your conversation. So thanks for being a guest on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate your invitation. It's great chat.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.